Hello and welcome back to channel Pharmacology Simplified. In today's video, I am first going to discuss about the pathophysiology of diabetes mellitus and how insulin plays a role in glucose homeostasis in the body, the synthesis, storage and release of insulin, and how insulin leads to the transportation of glucose inside the cells for energy utilization. So first, when we talk about diabetes mellitus is a group of metabolic disorders. That means there is something associated with the body's metabolism, and there are multiple pathways that are actually contributing towards the development of diabetes mellitus. The symptoms of diabetes mellitus, the very first symptom is hyperglycemia, and that hyperglycemia results because of metabolic disturbances. Correct? So first, let us have a brief introduction about diabetes mellitus. Diabetes mellitus is characterized by hyperglycemia, correct? And this hyperglycemia ultimately leads to three conditions: polyuria, polyphagia and polydipsia. Polyuria is frequent urination, polyphagia is excessive hunger, and polydipsia is excessive thirst. Why all these things are taking place, I would be discussing them later on while I discuss about the actions of insulin in the body, correct? So this is about diabetes mellitus. Now the factors, there are several factors that can lead to development of diabetes mellitus. They can be environmental factors like the lifestyle, how active an individual is, and there can be genetic factors as well, because if there is family history of diabetes mellitus, in that case diabetes also prevails in the offsprings. The offsprings are at high risk. And the diabetes is actually characterized by two things, because the body is not able to metabolize, the body is not able to utilize the glucose properly, efficiently. So there can be two types. So diabetes mellitus is of mainly two types. We classify them into type 1 and type 2. The type 1 diabetes mellitus is insulin dependent diabetes mellitus, as I mentioned here, and the type 2 is NIDDM or non-insulin dependent diabetes mellitus. The difference between these two diabetes is that this is insulin dependent. The name clearly shows that there is deficiency of insulin in the body, and when there is deficiency of the insulin in the body, then the body is not able to utilize the glucose properly. But this type 2 diabetes mellitus, this is more dangerous to an individual, because even because there is no deficiency of insulin, there is signaling problem, correct? Like the body, the insulin that is being produced in the body, there is no deficiency of insulin in the body, but the insulin that is being produced in the body is not able to elicit sufficient pharmacological response, and it is not able to transport the glucose inside the cell, correct? So even if we supplement glucose from the external sources, we cannot manage this diabetes mellitus that easily, correct? So but this type 1 diabetes mellitus can be managed easily just by supplementing the insulin from external sources, correct? With diabetes, there are certain complications as well. So there are several complications that are associated with diabetes mellitus. They include neuropathy, they include nephropathy, retinopathy, cardiovascular complications. Later stages, it can also cause memory impairments in the individuals, correct? So now we will move ahead, but before that, there is one thing that we should understand: that diabetes mellitus is a group of metabolic disorders that is characterized by hyperglycemia, and this leads to three classical symptoms: polyuria, polyphagia and polydipsia. There are two types of diabetes mellitus, type 1 and type 2. Type 1 is insulin dependent diabetes mellitus. So if we supplement insulin from the outside, this hyperglycemia can be managed easily. But in the second case, this is non-insulin dependent diabetes mellitus. So even if we supplement insulin from the outside sources, this insulin will not be able to show its action, because the receptor that responds towards insulin is not functioning properly. There is certain sort of signaling disturbances in the receptor. And with diabetes, there are certain complications as well: neuropathy, nephropathy, retinopathy, serious complications, and memory impairments. The diabetic retinopathy is one of the primary causes for development of blindness in diabetic patients with long-standing diabetes mellitus in them. So now we will move ahead with the actions of insulin. What is insulin? But before that, we have to understand about what is glucose homeostasis. See, in our body, the glucose levels are very critical, correct? And if there is any decline in the glucose levels, our body may completely shut down. That can convert into coma and even death also. Insulin and glucagon, these are two hormones that work very closely against each other in order to maintain body's euglycemic. So insulin is released from pancreatic beta cells. The pancreas, there are gland. The pancreas, they act as both. They act as exocrine, they act as endocrine. The endocrine part is hardly 1 to 2% of the total volume of the pancreas, which has mainly three types of cells: alpha cells, beta cells, and delta cells. Although it has two other cells that produce pancreatic polypeptide and ghrelin. Ghrelin is the hunger hormone. It is also produced from the GIT, and the pancreatic polypeptide, it is an autoregulator of the pancreatic activity. But the main three cells are alpha cells, beta cells, and delta cells. Alpha cells release glucagon, beta cells release insulin, and delta cells release somatostatin. Glucagon and insulin, they act against each other. On one hand, where glucagon increases the blood glucose level, and while the insulin reduces the glucose level. And somatostatin inhibits both the action of glucagon as well as insulin. So I was talking about glucose metabolism. So in our body, this glucose homeostasis is also called as glucose tolerance. It is a very tightly regulated process, and there are several factors that can trigger the release of insulin or either the release of glucagon. When our body is in fasting state, because let us see with an example, like you eat food, you have your dinner at 8 p.m. in the night, and the next morning you are having a breakfast at 8 a.m. So there is a gap of complete 12 hours, or it can be more than that also. So this gap of 12 hours, we are not providing any energy to our body, we are not providing any energy source to our body, but still we are not dying out of lack of glucose. Why? Because there are several organs that are continuously putting in effort in order to keep us alive. Out of them, the liver and the muscles are very important, because the liver stores glycogen, and the release and it starts to break down glycogen into glucose, so that our body can continuously get energy, correct? And also similarly, the muscles also store glucagon, but they do not use that for these metabolic process in the early stages. Muscles store glucagon in order to feed themselves with glucose while there are high intensity of physical activity, correct? During fasting state, fatty acids are also metabolized by our body. The lipids are metabolized, and these free fatty acids are converted into are utilized for producing ATP. But one organ, brain, it is not able to utilize these free fatty acids. So brain needs a constant supply of glucose, else the individual takes a few seconds. Individual will take few seconds in order to go into a comatose state, correct? So now after discussing this glucose homeostasis, now I will be moving on to the insulin. So now if we see like the synthesis of insulin, this may be appearing a bit difficult, but it is not. It is very simple. See, the synthesis of insulin starts as pre-proinsulin, right? So there are two words, pre and pro. So there are two stages, two steps that must undergo in order to get insulin, because first we will get rid of this pre and then we will get rid of this pro. So this pre-pro insulin, we know it's a peptide, correct? It has two chains. So this pre-pro insulin, it is of 110 amino acids, and it has several components. I'm going to explain. First we have this SP. This is called a single peptide for 21 amino acids. Then we have this B segment, or which later we refer as B chain. This has 30 amino acids. Then we have this C that is called as peptide C, that has 31 amino acids. Then we have A segment, that has 21. So these two in blue, they will ultimately become the insulin. And these are prohormone convertase. There are two prohormone convertase. Each is made up of 2 amino acids. So they will account for total 4 amino acids. So if we total 24 plus 30 plus 2 plus 31 plus 2 plus 21, this will tally up to 110 amino acid. So after the first cleavage, there is removal of single peptide of 24 amino acids. So this will be removed, and there will be folding and formation of disulfide bonds. There will be formation of 3 disulfide bonds. First there will be folding. So then once this single peptide is removed, then we get proinsulin. So this 110 minus 24, we get 86 amino acids. Now there will be formation of 3 disulfide bonds, 2 disulfide bonds between A and B chain. So they will be our interchain, and there will be 1 disulfide bond that would form in chain A, correct? So there will be 1 intrachain and there will be 2 interchain. So, and the protein, it has now folded. Now, and you can see I have simply bent this structure. This is bent, this is A chain, this is pro convertase, this is C, this is pro convertase 2, and this is B. In the last step, what happens? There is PC cleavage, this pro hormone convertase cleavage. It cleaves at here, correct? When this cleavage happens, what happens? Like if I see here, this convertase, when these convertase will act, there will be cleaving from here and here, and this peptide chain will be freed. So we call it as peptide C, correct? And this is for 31 amino acids. Initially it was for 31. Now, and what we get, see what we get, we have insulin. One is A chain of 21 amino acids, B chain for 30 amino acids. So this totals up to 51 amino acids. And if we see the breakage of all the reactions, 110 the pre-proinsulin, then we get proinsulin at 86. Now we can see the complete breakup of this. Pre-proinsulin 110, we remove 1 single peptide, 24, we get proinsulin of 86. Now we subtract peptide C is removed, and 2 pro-convertase are removed, 4. So this will leave 86 minus 31 and 4. This will leave us with 51, and this is our insulin, correct? So if you want, you can have a screenshot of this so that you can use it